The heat is kind of insane right now, so I hope you guys are all keeping cool, just like my last name. I'm Miss Christina Frost, a sick chick who's been skipping leg day since the 80s, and we are gonna bring you a little bit of Disabled Storytime number 3. Thank you, Disability Subreddit, we love you!
Reddit.
Why is it always Reddit?
How do you feel about person-first language? I will admit I had never actually really thought of anything like this. I believe I am just too old.
Am I speaking Old Ponish?
I'm disabled, and I've become used to the fact where I don't feel like calling myself disabled is somehow a negative.
Is that an insult, or is that part of the public speaking advice?
At school, I made a reference to disabled people and was told by a non-disabled person that I need to use person-first language and say people who have a disability or people who are living with a disability because that reduces stigma.
Let's change the stigma, my enigmas.
I was bothered by this at first, but now that I think about it, I don't know if I'm being overly sensitive to being criticized or if I should actually be using person-first language.
What do I do? What do I do?
I feel like being disabled is more of a neutral aspect of identity, and trying to distance yourself from it is actually stigmatizing towards disability because you are treating it like a bad word.
We say words that are bad.
And not just a fact of your body like hair color. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this.
What do you think?
I'd much rather people actually took meaningful steps towards addressing accessibility issues rather than writing papers on the semantic differences between disabled people and person with disabilities.
The disabled.
As long as we respect an individual's right to self-describe appropriately, individual preferences will always vary, and a broad brush policy
I don't want to paint with a broad brush here.
rarely actually works for an issue. As a multilingual person, I find it to be a very English-centric debate that many other languages don't have.
What's that in English?
That is English.
And that perhaps we should focus more on the important issues like accessibility and employment. Many other disability groups have their own way of self-identifying. I don't think there's going to be an overall way to describe disability that is ever going to happen.
Well, that's just simply not gonna happen.
Especially with such a diverse group and wide range of situations. A lot of the people in here are actually talking about that it really only happens in the English language, and I completely see that.
Salutations! Crap, that's English.
I'm not sure it was ever intended for the majority of disabilities, but from my understanding, it has been intended to take the stigma out of mental health disabilities.
This is not ever what I intended.
That you are more than your mental health diagnosis. It was a way to put a positive spin and to remind yourself that no, you are not just anxiety.
No more depression, kitty. No more anxiety, mosquito.
In that context, it does work well, but it doesn't really apply to all disabilities that well.
Oh, it's just my fortune cookie. Probably doesn't apply to you guys.
There's also a related theory in chronic pain and fatigue called the gorilla on my back. Isn't that drugs, or is that a monkey on my back?
Putting a monkey on his back.
It's aimed to externalize conditions in an attempt to change the way patients relate to their health conditions and improve perceptions of control. It's called Taming the Gorilla by Action for ME. I pretty much agree with this theory. I feel like all of the evolving ways we try and say disabled are a product of able-bodied people who have never met a disabled person before.
He's not a robot, he's a disabled person.
So do you call that person a jackass, or are they a person with jackassery?
Surprise, jackass.
Person with jackassery is delightful, by the way. I think you hit a nail on the head there. I used to work at a supported employment agency that shoved first-person language down your throat.
Instead of being marketed and shoved down our throats.
But none of them, the loudest, had actually lived experience. It was so bizarre.
No! You're making everything much, much worse!
Like when people say shit like, special abilities!
The gypsy was right. I am special.
Special powers. I'll respect the person if they want first person for themselves, but there's nothing wrong with being disabled, and I don't personally know anyone who uses person first. A jackass by any other name would still be a jackass. William Shatner. Oh wait, Shakespeare.
By William Shatner's Captain James Tiberius Kirk.
I don't care how someone self-identifies. I care very much when someone tries to police how I self-identify.
That's not the way American police do things.
I'm disabled. I have a disability. I have health issues. I am medically unwell. well. All of these statements are true, and I'll say whatever one I goddamn well please.
This. So much this. I can do whatever I want. So can you.
The whole point of using person first is to humanize the person, right? Remind people that we are people who happen to have disabilities.
I am a human being!
I'm not going to correct them on their language, but I'm going to damn well correct their thought process.
Just remember, the last thing you did in life was correct me.
In the bigger picture, I don't care either way, which is better. What I do care about is them correcting you, a disabled person, on what you choose to say and call yourself.
Language.
If someone needs person-first language to remember I'm a person, I really think the problem isn't the language. You can self-identify however you would like. If someone that I encounter thinks that my hearing loss makes me less of a person, grammatical changes aren't gonna cause them to think differently. Let's try it again. If someone that I encounter thinks my structural integrity makes me less of a submarine, grammatical changes aren't gonna cause them to think differently. Too soon? I consider myself a disabled person, not a person with a disability. It's not a pet I carry around and sit down when I'm tired of it. As a medically retired college English instructor, I find person who is living with stupidity, semantic hokey pokey, ridiculous.
Hokey pokey.
I do too. Because I kind of feel that way myself. I've always been sick, so I don't really know anything better. So for me, personally, it's identity at this point.
My job is my identity.
There may have been a point early on in the first couple of years where I could have identified with person's first language, but now I'm old, tired, disabled, and perfectly happy to just be what I am. Yeah!
Sure, we're too old to change the world. What about that kid? Sitting down, opening a book right now.
I'm also happy to use first-person language depending on what the person identifies as themselves.
Just use your legs!
We can't break character!
Oh, for crying out loud!
No.
Everyone's gonna be different. What irks me, though, is the notion that a non-disabled person's thought it was a good idea to check a disabled person on their disability language use. Now that in and itself sounds ableist.
We don't have time for this Skyrim side quest bullshit. He'll slow us down.
Hey, don't be ableist.
And I haven't seen this one before. Stupid. You wouldn't say a person with gayness. Jessica Kellgren-Fozar did a video about this. I'm not a person with gay. They say it's a really good one. I'll have to check it out too. This is my exact argument. It's very laden language. I'm not a person living with Jewishness, so I'm not a person living with my disability. I'm disabled, I'm Jewish, I'm gay.
Happens to be Jewish.
Incredibly Jewish.
And then there's this beautiful person. I've always identified myself as a mom, cat lady, who is disabled. I never think to say I'm a person who lives with a disability and chronic guilt from forward Catholicism that questions my sexual identity.
Because there was a crushing guilt that comes with being a Catholic.
Plus interest, plus guilt, plus more guilt.
Maybe this language policing is yet another strong reason why I don't people. I now want to use person with gayness at some point in my life to see what happens. I am definitely a person with gayness, and how dare you suggest otherwise?
I am so gay with my gayness.
I feel like first person minimizes my disability. It's something I cannot just put aside when I'm not feeling up to it.
Morty, just put it down!
I myself tend to have self-deprecating humor, so I probably use many words for myself that many people would not think to use, or have the balls.
Is there someone in our world we offended in some way?
And I would have never even thought about this comment. I speak in a quiet, slow, broken up way, and it is a serious struggle. The less I have to say, the better.
My only worry is that they'll be so excited they'll talk over each other and I'll miss some of the details.
And so, I'm disabled versus I have a disability has a clear winner.
I think it's clear who this week's winner is.
Able-bodied people need to stay out of this because it's trying to change our language and it takes away our autonomy to think for ourselves. It's important for non-disabled people to lead with people because they often only see the disability.
I didn't see wheelchair on the script.
Oh, did you not get the new pages?
But for the actually disabled, we have permission to call ourselves whatever the fuck we want.
What am I supposed to do now, Brian? Whatever I want, whenever I want?
Yeah.
Virtue signaling behavior pushed onto the disabled by people without disabilities. If a person really cares enough, then they should just ask the individual in question what their preference is.
What if they like to be called these?
No. Let's not get into that.
My preference is that people learn what my disability actually is, rather than how to address it by name.
I can't pronounce artist anal.
This is something I would not concern myself with. I refer to myself as lame, a cripple, a gimp, and I'm laughing when I say these things. I realize it offends some, and I wouldn't use those terms around a person who does not see it as I do. But when you're autistic, you end up doing that. I'd put my foot in my mouth more than once.
Now we stick foot in mouth, tie arms like pretzel, and
ends up me asking some very inappropriate questions and saying some very inappropriate things. This is probably the worst one I could think is differently abled.
The Specially Able Alliance Against Defamation.
Specially able? Oh, here we go again. Is that what is calling the short bus kids now?
Go yourself. Snowflakes can kiss my crippled ass.
They all snowflakes.
Isn't English cool? They can both be used as a noun and a verb.
And an adjective.
They can go touch grass.
I planted grass for you to touch.
Mwah. Perfect comment, Christina. It kinda defeats the purpose of making someone feel included. If you're gonna use that very same thing, single them out, right?
It's like using a wheelchair for the fun of it.
It's a useless gesture. It's one of those things that people do to make themselves feel good and sound helpful, but not actually be any.
You're not helpful. You're not helpful. You were really not helpful, Marv. Really not helpful.
Nobody gets to tell you how to refer to yourself. Disabled isn't a dirty word.
A handicapped person. That's nice. Oh, that's nice. It's called disabled. Disabled.
Well, that doesn't sound so hot. I think I would prefer handicap.
All in all, most of the disability community doesn't really give a shit. Call yourself whatever you want, respect other people, and stop limiting yourself instead of worrying about semantics.
It was a metaphor. For what? It's not a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Semantics, schmantics.
It is not you that are disabled. It is society disabling you. Ending off with this comment, anything can be harmful if it's said with harmful intent. So I assure you, a person with a disability can easily become just as hurtful as stigmatizing when said by a shithead.
What is it? What a disabled handicap? What's the word?
Yeah, those are...
Challenged? Are you challenged?
Right now I am. Yeah.
Okay.
I myself really don't care because it's always the same sit. Disability merchant profile.
I am sold. She's got me. I'm gonna go buy a t-shirt.
What are your thoughts on all this? If you have watched this entire thing, put down below what a wheelchair is used for. Wrong answers only.
Oh, it's me. Are you filming? Oh, yes, you are.
And now my husband came home to annoy me. Do you know how my husband can tell I'm filming?
She's got her toothsicks in.
You should live it up. You should go.
Have a blast.
Now, where did I put those vampire teeth?
I found them. Ow, ow, ow.